Overture 11 deals with an older statement that was passed by the Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America. That's a sister denomination with whom we have very close relations. And I think it was earlier than I realized. It was 2011, I think, they adopted this statement. And they adopted it as a member of NAPARC, or this is why the Overture has asked us to consider it. They are a sister denomination. We're all part of the National Association of Presbyterian Reformed Churches. And I start with theirs because it really addresses this issue that I just brought up. So, for example, the very subtle change in vocabulary, and we can go right back and understand from the novel, 1912, whoever controls language controls culture. What we call homosexuality was universally called sodomy from the Bible. And actually, it was in Germany, their overture points out, or their statement, that because of the social sciences, to get rid of pejorative reactions, as well as to put this on a scientific level, that this is not an aberration, the language was moved to homosexuality, and then kinder and gentler terms, lesbianism, gay, and queer. All of those terms gloss over the awful reality of the Bible's term, sodomy. Takes us back to Sodom and Gomorrah, one of the sins for which they were destroyed, and a sin which the Bible condemns in both Testaments. Now, I didn't realize that, and in reading over the Overture, that was very enlightening to me, because right there we see the shift, and this is where the culture begins to be pressed now by the scientific community. And you can look at the research. There was obviously a lot of prejudice pushing to change the whole mentality toward sodomy. Then the report looks at the various historical attempts in science. Is this DNA? Is there a queer gene? That's the word that scientists use. I'm not being pejorative with that kind of language. Nature-nurture business. Is there something within a person that would incline them toward sodomy? And the report's so wise because it simply says, the scientific evidence at this point is absolutely inconclusive, but let's just assume there is. And then they address the issue from Romans 1 and other places that because of the awful destruction of the fall, we all have sinful proclivities. And so they move on to point out then that sinful proclivities towards sexual perversion are sin in themselves. Now, in some evangelical and Reformed circles today, and in our denomination, the Presbyterian Church in America, we have those that are saying that same-sex attraction is not sinful as long as one stays chaste. Well, our Savior says that any lust is adultery. But beyond that, same-sex attraction is clearly a perversion. The report gets into gender's the issue, not sex or sexuality. There's only two genders that God has created. It also addresses that people might have brain things that think of themselves partly as the other sex, the other gender, than what they are. And so it's a very balanced report. And so I would hope that our denomination will adopt this overture. In one sense, it'll be probably more difficult because it really does address, without coming out and saying so perhaps, the hermeneutical issues. We have a lot of people today, and this helped me understand why men who believe the Bible could be taking the kind of stands they take, as we've seen in the Revoice Conference, as we've seen people connected with the PCA having a known lesbian lead singing in their services. They were going to sponsor a conference that had her speaking, and the response was so vociferous that they canceled that, claiming they were ignorant of her beliefs. So because this report addresses the mindset, it wisely does so by saying even if science is proving completely correct in the future, that there's some genetic or mental predisposition, it's because of the perversion of the fall, and it's not natural. It's sin, and grace will relieve the great majority from this. But even if grace doesn't, it still must be put to death and mortified. So it's well worthy of study. It's a very useful report. I've only skimmed it last night when I realized the Overture is actually dealing with different issues. So those of you who are going to the assembly, I encourage you to read it, not just for the voting on it, but recognize that this is a very good tool to be used in our various reactions to things like Revoice and the different kinds of conferences like that.